Good morning, everyone. We have in today's reading a contrast between that which is eternal and that which is not eternal. And it provides for us a very good lesson in what's true, and not being angry and being, critical of other people, of course, is virtue. But the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Virtue will never make us fully happy. Virtue can make us prosperous. Virtue can make us healthy. Virtue can help us have loving, meaningful relationships. Virtue can bring us all the things that the human heart desires except one: lasting happiness, something that can't be taken away. The bank of good karma, it's wonderful to have good karma. I think many of us have had good karma in this lifetime. But we use it up because the pendulum of good and bad swings inexorably from one side to the other. And yet when I think about the past, and I want to read one of my favorite stories from the New Testament, but when I think of the past and really how probably still most of the planet, those who have any sense of an afterlife, let's just say, they think of remaining in their egos, remaining in their bodies, and, I don't know, strumming harps or eating grapes or whatever for an eternity, which with only a little reflection, one would say, gee, that sounds kind of boring. And Yogananda once said the reason God doesn't appear or speak even to most people is because most people would argue with them. Most people, if they went to heaven, would be restless and argumentative, and that's what we see on earth, don't we? In war and conflict and polarization. Some people are just on the edge of their nerves and complain and so on. And so how can we make any sense of the contrast between what basically has been the universal teaching, that Tattvamasi, thou art that, and the fact of the reality that we face? The wars, the suffering, the pandemic, the emotional upsets that we have. Relating the two extremes, and they are extremes, is what Yogananda called the spiritual path is like running down the street while juggling. The razor's edge of the twofold reality. Swami Kriyananda would give this example, our founder, but it's certainly been something I discovered, and I think many of you. When I look at baby pictures and pictures when I was young and so on, I think, boy, I'm really different now, aren't I? And I don't mean just in appearance, but in what my life is doing and what I consider valuable. And you think of all the stages of life that we've gone through, and we look back and shrug our shoulders and, but it's still the same old son of a gun, isn't it? It's still the me. There's still a continuity between everything we've experienced. And so one of the passages that we sometimes, I think in our readings appear, but for some reason just came to me that I would like to share, is how when Jesus met the lady at the well, she was a Samaritan, and a Samaritan was a low caste. I don't know what the issue was between the Jews and the Samaritans, but in any case, they didn't like each other evidently. And Yogananda, in his interpretation of, if you read the story sensitively, you realize that Jesus went out of his way. I mean, good Jews never went to Samaria, for God's sakes. Again, I don't know why, but that's how people are. They have their prejudices. But he went out of his way to go there. And so he left Judea and departed again into Galilee, and he must needs go through Samaria. Now, it wasn't a question of, using Google Maps. That was a question of spiritual need. He needed to see this woman. So he came to a little city whose name means nothing to me, near to the parcel of ground that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. Those of you who know the Old Testament know the importance of Jacob and his son Joseph. But anyway, so it was a very holy, sacred place. And Jesus, being wearied with his journey, I mean, they walked, right? They didn't have cars. So he sat out in the well, and it was about the 6th hour, which is either 6 a.m. or noon, I don't know which. There came a woman of Samaria to draw water. He said unto her, "Give me a drink." For his disciples went into town to buy meat. I'm hoping they were vegetarian, but let's face it, they probably weren't. Then said the lady of Samaria to Jesus, "How is it you ask me? How is it you, a Jew, ask me, a Samaritan, for a drink? For the Jews have no dealings with the Samaritans." Jesus answered and said unto her, "If you knew the gift of God, and who it is that saith to thee, Give me a drink, you would have asked of him, and he would have given thee living water." The woman said unto him, "Sir, thou hast nothing to draw the well from. You don't have a bucket or anything, and the well is very deep." So she missed the point, right? She didn't understand what he was talking about. Not that he was being super clear, right? Let's face it. Parables and all that sort of thing. He answered and said, "Whoever drink of the water I have shall thirst nevermore. But whoever drink of the water here from the well will thirst again." Said, "Sir, give me that water." She was no dummy. That I will not thirst not and not have to come out here to the well and draw water. Again, she didn't quite get it. And then suddenly he changed the subject. He said, "Go call your husband and come here." And the woman answered and said, "I have no husband." Jesus then replied, "That's because you have said well, truthfully, that you had no husband, for you have had 5 husbands, and he whom you're living with is not your husband." So she was truthful, and he tested her, Yogananda said. Apparently she was a disciple from some prior incarnations, and according to what he wrote, she had fallen spiritually into the situation of her current lifetime, but she was truthful. And so she said, "I perceive, sir, that thou art a prophet." And then she went on. She immediately changed the subject, clearly had a spiritual insight. She said, "Our forefathers worshipped here on this mountain, Jacob's well. And ye," meaning the Jews, "say that Jerusalem is where we should go." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, believe me, the hour cometh when ye shall neither in this mountain nor yet in Jerusalem worship the Father. For you don't know what you worship and what God is, but we do. And the hour cometh, and now is, when the true worshipers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth. For the Father seeketh such to worship him. God is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth." And it was at that point that she declared Jesus to be the Christ, to be the Messiah. They may have been Samaritans, but they were basically Jews, and they knew the history. And then she ran into town to tell everybody in the town, and the story goes on, and he stayed there for a couple of days, and people were very taken by and accepted her testimony that this was the Christ, the Messiah. So then his disciples came back with their sandwiches, and they knew Jesus was tired and presumably hungry. So he said, "Master, eat." They said, they brought him food. But he said, "I have meat to eat that you don't know about." And as Swami Kriyananda put it, he said, then they thought they had a sandwich in his pocket. But, so, I mean, what's amusing to me is that whether she or they, I mean, these are his disciples, they miss the point constantly. And don't we? If the point is thou art that, tatvamasi, thou art the eternal, changeless, ever perfect, ever blissful soul, when you look in the mirror in the morning, is that what you see? I don't anyway, and so we I never tire of reminding us all, in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, the only joke he ever cracked was that most people miss the point. And so it is, if these who are with such a one as an avatar, a Christ, cannot feel that living presence, then, hey, we can be merciful, right, as it relates to ourselves. We are our own worst critic, are we not? And so then he goes on, so he said, my meat is to do the will of him that sent me and to finish his work. And then he goes on, and this is where I wanted to take this. Say not ye, there are yet 4 months, and then cometh harvest. Behold, I say to you, lift your eyes, for the fields are white already to harvest. And so this is that contrast then between where we are now and who we think we are now and who we really are. You know, in meditation, whether in a singular sitting or whether in a lifetime of meditation as we hopefully progress, either one and both, it's always both and, we sit and the first thing we confront is all the junk in our head, right? And so mindfulness, be aware of what you're thinking. Be mindful during the day of how you are speaking, what you are doing. So the first self-discovery is always to become aware of that little self. You know, Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita says, in answer to the very same question, says that for embodied beings, approaching the divine through I-thou relationship, through form, is easier. It takes a highly advanced soul to approach the Absolute. In Yogananda's interpretation of Jesus' words, God as a spirit, he reminds his readers of the teaching in Sanatana Dharma, the core teachings of India, that the Trinity, which is taught in India, maybe not under the term Trinity, you know, every book I read continues to identify Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva as the Trinity. Yogananda said that's not correct. Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva are the 3 aspects of Divine Mother, the 3 aspects of the Holy Ghost, the 3 aspects of the Om vibration in creating, sustaining, and withdrawing. That Om Tat Sat represents those bija sounds, mantras represent the Trinity of this God the Father, untouched, beyond, perhaps observing the creation, God as the creation, and the intelligent spirit within creation, the omnipresent aspect of God. But these 3 emerge together, as it were, from the spirit, which is the darkless dark, the lightless light. I saw a scriptwriter's quote the other day. It said something like, eternal nothingness is okay, but you got to be dressed for it. And I get it. You know, having taught for decades meditation and some of these things, sort of reminds me of Dr. Lewis, Yogananda's first friend and first disciple in Boston, 1920, who pestered Yogananda for an experience of cosmic consciousness. And finally, Yogananda got tired of being pestered, and he grabbed the doctor by his big lapels in those days, forehead to forehead, looked him straight in the eye and said, if I gave it to you, could you take it? And Dr. Lewis, feeling the presence of eternity perhaps dawning upon him, said, no. Or St. Augustine, like, make me good, but not yet. You know, we have to go through the stages. You know, virtue is closer to omnipresence than vice, if you will. But it's not enough. It will never make us happy. So this contrast it's a dynamic tension. And it appears in the body, in the form, in the personalities of the great saviors of humanity, the so-called avatars, those who have achieved that oneness but come back in human form to help and uplift humanity. They enjoy a twofold beatitude, because at the same time they have access to that realm beyond, and yet must play the great Leela, the great drama of creation, of personality, of even likes and dislikes. You know, Yogananda was said to love mangoes. Well, okay, I mean, did he really love mangoes the way I love mangoes? Probably not. But in any case, you know, you have to be responsible to the task, to the Dharma you have, to do your duty. But you know, duty and doing it, we can succeed, we can fail. You know, this woman had 5 husbands. I mean, I don't know what to make of that, but anyway, I feel sorry for her in any case. Those things really don't matter, because at the same time as we may fail, at the same time as we might succumb to yet another vice of ours, if we can every time we fail say, I'm just not there yet. Every time, if we affirm that inner freedom. You know, the world, generally speaking, has not been ready for this teaching. It more or less disappeared even in its source in India, where down through the ages from which we've come, people talk more about heaven than cosmic consciousness. You know, sort of like Swami's joke about the Buddhists who seem to emphasize the eternal nothingness, whereas in Sanatana Dharma the emphasis is on Satchidanandam bliss, on the fulfillment of that darkless dark, lightless light. But those who emphasize the nothingness, his joke was, well, no wonder they come back as bodhisattvas. They take a rain check on the idea of who wants to be nothing, you know? I mean, the survival instinct isn't embedded in us just for egoic purposes. Tat tvamasi, thou, we are that. And yet we have to go through these stages. So when we sit to meditate, we confront the me. We confront the restless thoughts, the monkey mind. And then we are given in the path of meditation, and certainly here at Ananda, as Yogananda taught the various stages and levels of meditation, but also universally, we are given something to focus on. Now, Mark, cover your ears. We're going to talk about concentration now. That's a running joke between Mark and me and Morley. And so then we're given a focal point to bring the mind to one focus rather than a dispersed focus. Okay? But we don't live in an age where we're very focused. Quite the opposite, isn't it? And in the age from which we've come, the only focus really was the body and how I feel about things. We, at least, by virtue of science and an expanded knowledge and so forth of a greater reality than the village we live in and the family we support or serve, we have a greater expansion of awareness. But in meditation, then we need a focal point. Yogananda defined meditation as concentration upon God or one of the aspects of superconsciousness, the 8 aspects, peace, wisdom, prana or energy, love, deep calmness, the inner astral perceptions of sound and light, and of course the mother of them all from which we have come, the bliss of the soul. And so focalizing one pointedly on an inner reality. I think of the story I love this story of Ramakrishna Paramahansa, who was a great devotee of Goddess Kali, as was Yogananda's family and part of his lineage. And he had he was an avatar, a great soul, and he lived in the generation prior to Yogananda in the same vicinity in Calcutta, in fact. And he would have these wonderful visions of the goddess Kali. Well, at one point in his life, he didn't really need a guru, but at one point in his life, sort of like Jesus fulfilling all righteousness by having John the Baptist bless him, because in a prior lifetime, Yogananda said John the Baptist, as Elijah, was his guru, which is why he called out to Elijah from the cross. And so the guru, Totapuri, and some of us visited one of his ashrams in seaside city of Puri a few years ago. Wonderful place. So Totapuri was the guy who sort of came from, stage left into Ramakrishna's life, and he trained him, he gave him the counsel to go beyond form, nama rama, beyond name and form. And the story that I love is that as they were facing each other and meditating and whatever, Totapuri, Ramakrishna was having yet another vision of Goddess Kali. And so Totapuri picked up a piece of glass and he ground it right into his spiritual eye. And he said, "Kill Divine Mother." And so then he, Ramakrishna, went beyond form into the formless state of spirit. But like the script writer said, not everybody's ready for that. You got to have the right clothes. You've got to be ready for that. And I think of all the suffering taking place, and so many of us are praying for people in Ukraine and so forth. And of course, under such circumstances worldwide, people ask the point of suffering. If we didn't ever suffer, we'd never ask the tough questions. We'd never bother, you see. But yet there's a point about suffering that most people don't get, which is if someone steals from you, takes from you, that which you hold precious in a material form, your family, your house, your job, whatever, your money, all those sorts of things, your reputation, then they've been taken from you involuntarily. And so, of course, you want them back. Anybody who turns to God whenever they've lost everything is no renunciate. Everything's been taken. They haven't renounced anything. It's only those who reach the pinnacle of everything they want, who realize that it can't give them what they want. Only the truly successful, I don't mean that necessarily just materially, but I include that. St. Francis was born of a royal and wealthy family. The great rishis of India were all princes and royalty. We call it Raja Yoga for a reason. You wouldn't be here if in some way, in the past, in some measure of intelligence, concentration, awareness, competence, it wasn't enough. Do you see what I'm saying? You have to achieve some measure of success on some and many levels before you can really question reality. If you're in the gutter, it's very difficult to think of God. Yes, there are saints who have done so. There are saints who walked out of concentration camps. Yes, there have been. But it's pretty tough. There weren't very many. And so this path to the absolute, this path to the bliss which is the only reality there is, it's a teaching that's come into the world to offer solace and offer inspiration to people in a frenetic, unstable world. But we still have to work out our karma. The very communion with the Om vibration as a stage forward is the acceptance of things as they are, as it said in the patience affirmation. We cannot get out of this situation of our karma until we embrace it. We cannot find a higher, as Sri Yukteswar put it, those who are too good for this world are adorning some other. And so we've got to do the work. But who is the doer? Who is the healer? Who is the blesser? You see, we can't, until we advance past that sense of doership, until we even aspire to pass that sense of the little self, the doer, we're just going to go round and round like little squirrels in a squirrel cage. Good karma, bad karma, good karma, bad karma, you see. And so without this, Krishna says in the second chapter, I think it's verse 40 of the Bhagavad Gita, that this inner path of stillness, of seeking that state, not only will free us from dire fears and colossal sufferings, but there's no there's no kickback, there's no opposite to that. And that which we gain in the center of our being is forever ours. Now, out of 1,000, one seeks me, Krishna says, because there's nobody out there talking this way, so to speak. Very few people look up unto the hills from which cometh my help. My Lord, as it were. This is a very deep teaching. It's a both and reality, doing the work and not doing the work. Do you see? Who does the work? And so tattvamasi, I'll just leave it at that, because it's a paradox of life and living that can't be solved by words. It can only